Okay.
Hey guys, I've got the mompreneur on today. Mandy Carpenter, divorced, foreclosed on, feeling like a failure. You're not alone. I've done it all. You're not ruined or dirty. You're beautiful. Shed your shackles with me and let go of the past. Propel your future. Join the mompreneur movement. Mandy Carpenter. That's going to be the beginning of her book, guys. She's now at a point where she's opened up her Amazon store. She's at home raising her kids. And Mandy, take it away. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you actually got here, and what drives you, and why are you so passionate about helping these women break out of the mom PTA mold?
I think I'm most passionate because I just feel like there's this stereotype of what you have to be, and if you choose to work either outside of the home or well, I just feel like there's so much guilt if you try and work outside of the home, and then to be an entrepreneur and to be a mom is also, there's so much guilt because you can't do everything. You can't bake cookies and run a business, and if you try and do everything, then something ends up failing. So I just feel like women shouldn't feel like the guilt there, and they should be able to focus on their business and trust that their kids are still going to be okay, and that their kids are still going to thrive, and they're still able to stay home with their kids, which is why they're choosing to be an entrepreneur in the first place.
So you're saying I can't have guilt-free cookies when I cook cookies at home? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Because
I'm saying you don't
I'm
have
an
to
entrepreneur.
make
I'm a
them.
dad, and I've got my kids at home, and
Yes.
I don't do homeschooling, but I definitely have my kids around, and we bake all the time. So I definitely have some guilt-free cookies. So Mandy, I know that you didn't start there. I know you come from a long history of overcoming a lot of challenges you've actually been faced with in your life. And could you open up and share some of those with the audience so they can let them know it's going to be okay for them to actually overcome some of those same challenges?
Sure. So a few things. Growing up, I grew up with an alcoholic mother, and I um, grew up like super low income. Just I learned at a very young age to kind of focus on taking care of my own needs, whether or not like that was walking myself to school, starting in like third grade, or learning how to like make my own meals. And then one thing is I just had a really poor relationship with money, because when my mom would get money, even though she did work part-time, she would typically just drink with it. So we lived in the same neighborhood as a liquor store. So I knew that when we did get money, that it would always go there. So it was always like a sad time, like to even have money. And then I ended up living with my grandparents when I was around 12, when I started middle school. And my grandfather was also an alcoholic, so I struggled a lot with just self-worth. And another thing that I haven't mentioned before, but is that I didn't actually meet my dad, my biological dad, until I was 7. And the only reason that I ended up meeting him was because my mom wanted child support. So I met him when I was 7, and I ended up meeting his family. He had 3 kids by the time I was 7, and he was married. So I met him and started spending my summers in Oklahoma with my dad. And then from there, I struggled a lot with like an eating disorder all through high school, and I was actually hospitalized for 3 months in 10th grade because I was just extremely underweight, and I had a lot of medical conditions that were related to that. So fast forward a few years, I ended up getting married when I was really young. I was 19, and I had a daughter when I was almost 20. I definitely think now that a lot of the reasons the marriage failed was because I just couldn't handle like just being in a relationship or just having like a house and cars and all these material things. and just having that success. So there was definitely a lot of sabotage from me, and then also like my ex-husband's not completely guiltless. Like he definitely had a lot of like he contributed enough that it wasn't entirely my fault.
And I know you and we worked through some of the burdens and some of that kind of stuff just recently. And could you talk a little bit about what your mindset was then and how you felt almost like defeated, ashamed? Because I think that's definitely something that I know that I relate it with, is I know that our listeners are going to relate with, that, it's okay if we do make mistakes in life, it's okay to let go of them. And, possibly, what are some of the things that you were thinking at the time you were going through them, and how you even had trouble this is probably the first time you ever shared this story, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and now the emotions that you have now are like, what? I mean, how do you feel about this now?
So before we talked, I would say a lot of what I still carried was just feeling like a failure and feeling like a lot of guilt from just or like shame, definitely, from going through a divorce in the first place, but then having like our house foreclosed, just the amount of shame from that. It was definitely crippling, because I feel like before our conversation, I would say that I felt like a lot of responsibility and a lot of I definitely carried a lot of the weight from just having, I don't know, because I kept trying to tell myself, well, I was really young and stupid and didn't make good decisions, and everyone does that. But I didn't realize until after we spoke that that's not true. I wasn't stupid, and it wasn't just because I was young. It was definitely a lot of it had to do with things that I may not have realized at the time.
A lot was timing, right? I mean, just timing in your life and where you're at, what you're doing. You're 21 or 22, right? You first bought your house. And then what year was that roughly in the market and stuff?
2007. It was actually the top of the market.
Yeah,
so
it was top of the market. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not the only one, that went through that. Millions of Americans went through the same thing. And to let go of that now at this point, having that basically a house off your back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you've overcome that. And what was the big discovery that you had along the way that realized that like I'm going to be okay, and I can go out and, connect with other people and help them with what they're doing? Because I know that's one of the things you're really passionate about.
Well, I think definitely realizing that, I think realizing that it's not that I can't carry the blame for everything. That even though, I don't know, because I feel like a lot of it was, I don't know, I just felt like it was my fault. Everything was my fault. And now looking back and looking at it on paper and realizing that, well, there were all these circumstances in place and all these things that I didn't realize or I wasn't able to articulate, and just not feeling like I was worth it. Because a lot of what I would feel when I was married really young is that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good enough wife. I was never going to be affectionate enough because I didn't know how to be the perfect wife. And now looking back, I don't think I would make the same decisions. Even just 10 years later, I feel like now I understand a lot more, and I know that in fact, I am worth it, and that I am able to be a wife and a mom, and I'm able to do all these things that I just didn't think I could do before.
Now you're doing them. You're raising, you got 3 kids now. You got our husband. You guys got your own place, and you're talking about growing your business to a place where you can get another house, so you can rent this one out, even having like a farmhouse.
Yeah. So what I would like to do in the next 3 years is to pay off our mortgage. And then I have a couple different ideas. One is to rent out, actually to let my mom live here, my biological mother, just rent free, so that she just has a safe place, because she is actually not an alcoholic anymore. She has been alcohol free for about 3 years now. So we don't actually have a strong relationship because I feel like that time has kind of passed, but she is active like in my life, and my children know her, which I couldn't say 3 years ago. But I would just love to like either like provide for her and just have a place for her to come, or to just know, like, to meet people, and if they have a need and they're not able to provide a safe place, like to just be able to offer that. And to not have like if they can avoid like Section 8 housing or living in a poor neighborhood, but still like being able to get on their feet. I was a single mom for 5 years, so I had people who were generous enough to either allow me to live with them or to rent like an in-law kind of area in their house, so that I always had like a safe place for me and my daughter. So I would love to be able to do that for someone else.
No, absolutely. I think just that, and what are some of the people or some of the things you've actually done that have been the most helpful along the way to help you turn that corner, to have that discovery for yourself? Because I know it didn't happen like overnight, but and I know you've had some people in your life that have come in and help you.
So one huge thing was in 2010, I went through a really bad trauma, and I wasn't able to work for a little bit, but I was a single mom. And a little bit about me is I was making really good money working as a research analyst for a financial company. And at the same time, what I wanted to do was, and what I think a lot of women want to do, is to be stay-at-home moms. But sometimes that's not an option, or you're not able to make it, or even like married women aren't able to make it on one income. So what I did was I became a waitress. And the reason I did that, even though it seemed like it was moving backwards, was because I could work 12-hour shifts and make the same exact amount of money in 3 days that I was making working like 8 to 5 days a week. And then I could still spend 5 or 4 days being like a stay-at-home mom with my daughter. So I did that for a few years until she was in kindergarten. And in 2010, so I said that to say in 2010, I was a waitress, and I went through a really traumatic event, and then I wasn't able to work for a little bit. And I had this very gracious family who didn't actually know me. They had never met me, but they heard my story from a mutual friend. And they invited me to stay in their $1 million house and live in part of their house with my daughter, Lily. And it was such a blessing to me to just have this family who invested in me, not only by giving me a place to stay, but just by getting to know me and getting to know Lily and loving her really well, and just being extra generous with their material things, but also their time and their energy, and just loving us very well during our time there. And I don't know. So now I want to be that person. I want to have a place in my house where I can either invite foster kids in who may not ever get out of the system. So that's a dream that I have. But also just have this space if I meet someone to be able to meet their need, with material things, but also just emotionally to just love them well. So I think that just having that influence in my life definitely motivates me to be successful.
Oh, that's awesome. I know that's part of your passion and drive. So if somebody, let's say you were going to have a discussion and it was going to be with yourself going back, to that time where you were hitting that point where you're kind of hitting that wall, what would you say, or what would you do for that person at that point in time? And what advice would you give yourself back then?
Definitely, one thing I would say is to ask for help, because there's definitely a lot of times where situations could have been avoided if I would have known that there were people that were willing to help me. And I didn't have like family support, but I think that I had enough friends that I probably could have asked for help before things got really bad. So definitely like reach out to people, and you're probably not alone, or as alone as you feel. And the second thing would be to not give up, because I feel like there was definitely time, like for people who don't have children or who don't have like a reason to keep going in those situations, I feel like it would be really easy to give up. And I feel like a lot of how I am who I am today is because I had a child. So Lily's like my saving grace, I say sometimes, because like I don't think I would have done the things I did. Like I think I did a lot of what I did just because I had to. And so even if you're alone, and even if you're single or you're like not a mom, there's always still like a reason and a story, and it may not feel like it, but
Just let them know they're not alone out there. You know, I know when I went through junior high and high school, like I was sharing with you, I mean, I was raised by a single mom and 2 kids, you know, and me and my sister. Mom was always working really hard, 7 p.m., 7 a.m. So a lot of times, like I barely see her. It'd be like 2 ships passing in the night at times in the morning. I wouldn't see her at all because she got home after I went to school. So I got up and got myself to school and stuff. And then at nighttime, I was doing my homework on my own, doing all that stuff. And then, you know, I played sports. So a lot of times after school, she wouldn't see me because of that. And she usually would leave some food on the stove at times, you know, and make a lot of leftovers. So I think I can definitely relate with that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about what you do and how maybe some other women want to become part of the mompreneur movement, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
So I do have an email right now, or like a website, which is just mandyccarpenter.com. Mm-hmm. And I run a Facebook group right now of about 200 women who are all moms, and who are all business owners. So most of them are entrepreneurs. So I guess that would be the best way.
Awesome. So Mandy C. Carpenter, right? Mandy C. Yeah. Carpenter. And then that's to get on the Facebook group. And what's the Facebook group called?
It's just Moms Making Money right now.
Moms Making Money. There you go, guys. All right. Well, you guys link up with Mandy C. Carpenter, right, at her website, and connecting with her because she's there, and I know she really wants to help a lot of entrepreneur women out there that have gone through the similar shoes she's actually gone through, and really break free from that PTA mom mold. So I appreciate Mandy coming out to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah.